Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Finance and Resources Committee. Special welcome to Councillor Wagland. I think it's your first appearance with us. Welcome to the committee, and I hope you enjoy your stay on the committee. I'm not going to do that quite yet. That may come in any other business. We're obviously talking about Watford FC, where Councillor Wagland and I have a joint interest. Okay, right. Can I ask everyone to note the fire safety instruction that on hearing the alarm, you should leave the chamber via the double doors at the back, exit the building through the main entrance, and congregate in the car park. Also, please switch off your mobile phones and turn any other electronic devices being used to silent. We'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting is subject to an internet webcast recording where the proceedings are capable of repeated viewing. If you are seated in the public area of the council chamber, it is likely that your image will be captured by the recording cameras and result in your image becoming part of the broadcast. This may infringe your human rights, and if you wish to avoid this, you should leave the public seating area of the council chamber and move to the upper public gallery. If members are for any reason not present for the whole debate on an item, you should consider and seek advice as necessary on whether it will be appropriate for you to vote on that item. May I remind members to declare any interest when this item is raised on the agenda. Okay, item 1 is apologies for absence. Ms. White, have we received any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. There are no apologies this evening.
Okay, fantastic. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations to be made? I can't see any, so that's great. Thank you. We'll move on. Right, item 3 is minutes of the previous meeting. And begin on page 5. And Appendix A is the actions list. If we just turn to page 8, which is the Q2 budget update. We did have questions from Councillor Slade, and I believe that Marcus has responded to Councillor Slade on that one. We did have a question from Councillor Gordon. An officer will respond to Councillor Gordon. I believe that was sent as well. Councillor Gordon, did you get that? Well, you should have had a response. Right, we'll make sure you get that. But if when you're looking at the agendas, if you've put a question in, you haven't had a response, if you could let me know. I mean, obviously I'll chase it up as well, but we'll make sure you get one. I think you also raised an issue about the car parks, and I did say to you at the meeting to perhaps raise the suggestion with the corporate manager of facilities. I don't think that happened. If it hasn't happened, it's not a problem. We are going to discuss car parking on February the 18th. But if you want any info prior to that, might be an idea to email the manager, and we'll try and get you an answer beforehand, okay? Okay, no problem. Any other questions? Councillor Mayor?
Just one other addendum. Apologies actually were received by Councillor Cloak, who was still on this committee in the last meeting, and Councillor Lewis was substituting on that occasion, so we better record that. Councillor Lewis is now a permanent member of the committee.
Right. Okay. Right. Nothing else on the minutes. That's fine. Thank you. Okay. Is it agreed that those minutes, are they agreed and are consigned them as a true record? Is that all agreed? Okay, thank you. Right. Okay, thanks very much. Right, we then move to item 4, which is the Chair's report. It begins on page 13 of the agenda and updates members on the work that's been undertaken as part of the committee's remit. Just like to provide a further update on the Beyond the High Street Grant Fund, which we're launching on the 30th of January. All councillors will be emailed further details about the scheme ahead of it opening to businesses in shopping parades, villages and other commercial areas. Each councillor will be given an allocation of Beyond the High Street flyers to distribute to local businesses in their wards. These flyers will be placed in councillor pigeonholes this Friday. If you remember, we decided to do this extra funding because it had been limited to Brentwood, Ingatestone and Shenfield. It's now across the borough. So if in the villages you got village shops, whatever, or other parts of the borough which aren't included in those three areas, they can be considered now as well. Okay? So I think it's a positive move. Additionally, today there have been 44 Smart Start Brentwood workshop participants representing 33 local businesses from a wide range of sectors. These include professional services, marketing, creative, technology and personal care. And all participants have been offered one-to-one mentoring slots, the opportunity to apply for a £1,000 Smart Start Brentwood grant, and there are 4 more workshops scheduled before the end of March. This is part of our economic development strategy. This is the action bit. We talk about strategies. This is the bit where things get done and people are getting involved. And I'm delighted, as I say, to have 44 participants. I think that's very positive news for the council. Are there any questions on the report? Okay, no, I'm going to move on then. Thank you for that. Item 5 is the P8 budget update. The report begins on page 19 of the agenda. Mr Dickinson, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Chair. No, but I'm happy to take some questions.
Okay, I will move the recommendation set out on page 19 of the agenda. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, I'm happy to second the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the committee on this report, item 5?
Councillor Hurst.
Councillor Hurst.
Yes, thank you very much for the report. Very informative, and I think takes us through exactly what's going on pretty well. It is very striking, isn't it, that even after having transferred £3.75 million into reserves already this year, we are still looking at generating a further surplus of 459,000. On the one hand, I think we all need to pat everyone on the back, officers and members alike, for the astute investment that was made and then disposed of, which has generated the financial situation in terms of MRP and interest income, reduced interest charges, etc., that we have at the moment, which is generating a big chunk of that surplus, and that is good. But it is a lot of money that we are setting to one side. Clearly, there have been challenges this year in terms of delivery of service. Really good to see that we are now on the Cleaner Greener service delivery, actually spending the money that we set aside to do so. I think we're £1,000 in surplus or deficit, can't remember which way around it is, but that's really good to see. I think that matters a lot to our residents. I just wanted to commend officers for having gotten to that point. There are some fairly big overspends individually in here as well. So I have a question really, the overspend on the Brentwood Centre on the new contract. Perhaps we could just have a brief summary of what more we're getting for that additional £276,000. But I think overall, I just wanted to make the point that we clearly have got a situation where we could be doing more, perhaps in terms of one-offs for our residents, more investment this year rather than waiting for the budget for next year, which does have some quite substantial investments in it. But time is pressing, and we do have a situation where the borough could be, certainly on the street scene side, looking brighter than it is. I would go back to the pigeons point. You know, we've been told we haven't got the money to actually sort out the Shenfield and Hutton railway bridges, but we clearly do.
Thank you, Councillor Hurst, for your comments, enlightening as ever. Mr Dickinson, do you want to answer, perhaps give a response regarding the Brentwood Centre, or Sarah, any comments?
Thank you for your question. It's basically a budget realignment from the new contract to reflect the changes that have happened from the new contract.
Ever seen a crowd silence someone without a single word?
We have the answer from the
just before I have Councillor Murphy removed from the chamber. I'm jesting. Right. Sarah.
So I believe there's more investment from the contractor, which is why there is a reduction in the income.
It's been discussed, I believe, Councillor Barrett at housing. I don't know if anyone wished to comment at all.
I think it'd be clarified offline, but from my understanding, they effectively put greater amounts of money in themselves this year, and so we got less of a, in terms of, the exact numbers can come out there, but instead of giving a cash grant to us, it was invested into the service as such. So it's money we would otherwise have put in at a future date as such, so it's part of that kind of arrangement. But I'm not sure the Councillor Barrett, but I'm sure officers come back online, but effectively it's an invest to save style move.
Well, if we can get a response, we take a note, Ms. Wood. We can get a response on that. David, do you wish to say a bit more?
Yes, so there's that budget realignment. So the budget last year was set with the income being expected to be received, but the first year or 2 years of the contract, they have low income as there is that investment, and then it ramps up quite quickly in year 3 and 4 based on that investment. So that's just a bit like the positives that we had from Childerditch. This is a bit of a negative from something that wasn't necessarily budgeted for when we first set the budget in February, but it's just
And as for your other comments, they have been noted. Okay, it's probably the best thing to say at this stage. All right. Oh, I'm going to say they've been noted. You can interpret as you wish. Okay, any other questions on P8? Any other questions at all? No? Okay, I'm going to move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, we now turn to agenda item 6, which is the budget for 2026-27 and the medium-term financial strategy 26-29. Tonight is the first opportunity for members to ask questions and seek clarification on various aspects of the budget in a public forum. So what I intend to do as chair is exactly what I did last year. I'm going to go through each appendix, not literally page by page, but go through each appendix and welcome, if you like, questions, points of clarification from members across the chamber on any points that you want to raise, as I say, that you want to discuss. Tonight is not about political speeches and moving amendments. That will come at ordinary council meeting on February 11th. But it is an opportunity to delve into the detail of the budget, which we are responsible for. Well, the first part we're responsible for until it goes into the next stage, ordinary council. Before we go into detail, I'd like to obviously start by saying a big thank you to David Dickinson, Sarah Sandwood and all the finance team for the work they've done in putting this budget together with fellow officers and members of the Joint Administration. It has been a great team effort. It's gone on for many, many months and a lot of work has gone into it. So a big thank you from me and from Councillor Mayo. If we turn to the report, on page 3 we have the summary, and on pages 4 and 5 we have the recommendations R1 to R12, which I'm going to move on block. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, I'm happy to second.
Councillor Hurst.
You're moving them on block. There are some which we will, I'm sure, be all very happy to support. There are 4, maybe 5, where there is still a lot of work to go through before we would be happy to support them. If you move it on block, then you put us in an awkward position about the whole thing.
We understand it, Councillor Hurst, but as has been president, I think, I've been on this council for about 34 years. I can't remember when we went through appendices and voted separately on each one, certainly not under your administration, the Conservative administration, not when I was a member. They were always moved on block. We will be moving on block. You as an opposition group, it's entirely up to you to decide what you wish to do. got no problem with that. But that is what we'll be doing this evening.
Your prerogative.
Thank you. We're going to go to the first appendix, which is Appendix A. Just before I do that, one point I did want to mention, this report does say, I'm sure you've all read it, this report does say that local government reorganisation will change how Brentwood makes decisions over the next 2 years. So this may well be the last budget that members set through the normal committee process with our LGR related restrictions. So it's potentially quite historic that we're going to be moving this budget tonight, but also at full council in a couple of weeks' time. Right. Yep, Councillor Aspinall.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on that very subject and what Councillor Hurst mentioned earlier about being able to do one-offs for the residents of Brentwood, we have a big restriction on what we can and cannot do, thanks to the government's insistence that we do local government reorganisation. And so we have until this September to put in place any contracts that we would like to enter into going forward. So there are works that all of our committees, all of us here and at full council will have to do at pace with our officers to get them in place ready for September cut-off date due to the LGR restrictions. Councillor Kendall, Chairman, is quite correct. That will place an enormous strain on everyone to be able to do that, but I have faith in these officers and our members on the various committees to be able to put forward any new ideas that will benefit our residents and that we can take through. And Chairman is quite right, this could be our very last budget under these terms. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to turn to the report starts on page 3. This is the budget 2026-27 medium-term financial strategy. It's page 3 all the way up through to page 19. So before we go to the appendix, I want to just cover this report.
I think you should say it's page 3 of the
It's agenda item 6.
agenda item.
Yeah. Page 3 of agenda item 6. Yep. Okay. Ms Dickinson, do you have anything you want to raise on that part of the report at this stage?
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to provide a few words. So again, thanking Sarah Harris and the finance team for all their support. It's been a turbulent budget setting process. We've had fairer funding, we've had local government reorganisation in the background. There's been quite a lot of things happening, and at the same time, we've had to successfully, subject to next week, carry out an audit. So it's been quite difficult, and it's also been quite difficult to provide the messages we wanted to, because things did change quite a bit as we got to towards the end of December. But we've hopefully set a prudent budget, but one that also is looking to invest in some of the assets that the council's been looking to invest in for a number of years, and there's now this opportunity to do that. So I'd just like to stress that. And so the budget has been set in a prudent way, but it's not overly prudent so as to restrict. But there are some reserves set aside to balance any pressures. But this budget isn't looking to have another £4.5 million underspend, anything like that. But it is looking to have a balanced budget, but with some money set aside to invest in some key projects that members might identify. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So we've got that first part of the report for us tonight. Are there any questions arising out of that, or do you want to raise them later as we go in appendix? Councillor Hurst.
Probably best to do them all. Most of my questions, I think, actually apply to the general fund, which is Appendix A, isn't it? So maybe we can take it all then.
No problem at all. Whatever suits you. I just want to make sure that we've got a big report here and that everyone has an opportunity to raise questions, points of clarification. So with that, we will move on to Appendix A, which is page 47. And as Ms Dickinson says, the proposed budget for 26-27, the medium-term financial strategy, sets out a balanced financial plan for the next 3 years, aligned with the Council's corporate plan priorities. This will be the third year running that we'll have had a balanced budget that we're bringing before you this evening. The executive summary on page 49 highlights the key points of the budget, which we can go into in more detail. Mr Dickinson's made a few comments already, but we can open up to questions on Appendix A. Anyone wants to speak? Councillor Hurst.
Thanks very much, and I've probably got quite a bit on this. But you say it's a balanced budget, Chair. In actual fact, it's a budget which is producing a surplus in excess of £1 million. It's a budget which is producing a surplus in excess of £1 million. In fact, if you add together the various other elements which you're adding into earmarked reserves, you end up, and if you add in the surplus that we are likely to generate in the current year on the basis of the earlier report in this meeting, we're probably generating a surplus next year of £3.65 million in terms of increase in reserves. That is a very considerable sum on top of the £3.75 million that we've already done this year. So that's a lot of money that we're putting to one side. I know that there are colleagues on this side of the chamber who are concerned that we are creating reserves out of money which is from Brentwood residents, which ultimately will go into a new unitary authority and may not be used for the benefit of Brentwood residents. And I think that puts some time pressure on us to make sure that we do spend these monies to the benefit of Brentwood. Not wastefully, but I mean, I think we can look around the borough and see places where we do need to spend money. And activity in line with the priorities that came back in the survey that you did, to which I happily responded, and so did many others, I think, around what our residents would like to see. Very clearly, and you have some of those in this programme already, the CCTV investment I think is very welcome to see. And the further investment in street services as well. My question would be, are we doing enough of it? Is there more that we could be doing as a one-off spend, as opposed to building it into base budget? I understand the problems that we have within base budget. I've seen the projections that you have, and it is a roller coaster. You know, we have a lot of money coming in the very near term, and that is then eroded as the government reduces its central government grant to us, revenue support grant, etc., over the next 2 years, at least of the spending review. A strange situation, and one that is very hard to deal with, but still difficult in terms of explaining to our residents why we're increasing taxation on them when this year we don't need to. There's something about base budgeting, there's something about if you don't raise the council tax this year, then it's gone forever, and that affects the medium-term financial strategy. So I do understand why it may be necessary to think about one-offs rather than base budget increases. But there are things that you had the feedback in your survey on that you're not doing yet, particularly around working through the Community Safety Partnership, and here I will express an interest as your Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, working in collaboration with the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, joint funding of more activity to deal with the antisocial behaviour that residents clearly experience and feel threatened by, and feel some of the time feel their lives blighted by. So there's more stuff we could be doing in there. Those are, I think, key elements, and yet we aren't managing to get, if I may say, the rubber to the road. We aren't actually managing to get the revenue spending done, never mind about the slippage that we just heard about in the previous report on the Battery Centre and the continued slippage that we have seen on the Strategic Housing Development Plan. Capital is slipping too. I think that there is something I would like to, one of the questions I would like to ask is, how do we actually manage to make sure we get traction with this? How do we get the capacity into the council to make sure we actually deliver on these things. But also, I think I'd just like to reserve judgment in terms of supporting at least Appendix A and the way that it is casting the increase in council tax as being necessary compared with the spend, which includes some very attractive things and some necessary things. Clearly understand the hard work that's gone in around the investment we will have to be making to get us through the transition process to a new unitary council. And we wouldn't want to undermine that. That is a necessary thing that we'll need to do in the interest of our residents. We need to get there as well as we possibly can without seeing service slippage. But I think what we have here is a potential for delivering further service enhancements in that intervening period. And to that extent, I think it's going to be difficult to support Appendix A and the general fund proposals that we have. So I think the council's the questions really are, what can we do to prevent the slippage? Why haven't you included anything around antisocial behaviour when that clearly came back in the survey as one of the things that the residents are very interested in having? And, well, that'll probably do for now.
Okay, well, let's just start one by one. In terms of antisocial behaviour, you will know, reading the report, we've got further investment in CCTV. We've got substantial investment we put in CCTV previous budgets, but we've got more investment this time round, which is obviously designed to do that. We've obviously also got a very good relationship with the BID, and you'll be aware of the work that the street rangers are doing, particularly in terms of shoplifting and other issues we've got in the town centres. They've made a massive difference. So we're working very, very closely as a council with the BID manager and with the BID chair on that particular issue, because you'll be aware that's been a serious problem for some time. I think in terms of the reserves, it's one of these situations where there's so many unknowns going forward. So many, you know that yourself in your other position that you hold. There's a lot of economic unknowns, particularly in terms of things like building costs and various other issues. And we have some big plans that you can see in this budget that we're looking to deliver. And we want to be in a position where we can react to changing situations. We don't wish to go out and get new borrowing. We made that very clear. We're looking to utilise the funding and the monies that we've already got. So that is one of the reasons why we're holding some of those monies back. Again, as with all politics, it's a question of priorities and political choices. That is the choice that we're making as an administration. Yourselves may take a different one. We've also got a situation where we will be looking at corporate priorities. Again, there's a corporate priority reserve of £1 million, which will be discussed at the March Ordinary Council meeting, where various proposals and suggestions will be put forward. You may even have some yourself that you wish to put forward, and if you have, in the willingness to be listen and be receptive, which we always try to do, we'll try and obviously listen to what you have to say. But we are going to be reactive. There are things that we wish to do. We are investing more in street cleansing. The 2-3 things that came out big time from the resident survey: street cleansing, community safety, and also economic development, attracting inward investment, okay? And if you look at this budget, if you look at where the investment is, particularly on the growth item side of things, on officer capacity, what we're trying to make sure is we've got the officer capacity to deliver all these plans. Anyone who's gone into the assets team recently will see the extra people we've got on the assets side now. We will need that bigger assets team to deliver those packages, you know, for the work that's going into the Brentwood Centre, the Baytree Centre, what we're proposing with the depot. We need to have that expertise and that support there, and that's why we've got that. On things like the environment, we've got a new officer we're bringing in on the environmental side of things to deliver the plans that have been agreed by the committee. If we didn't do that, yourself or your colleagues would be saying, you've got all these great plans, who's going to deliver them? So, well, what I'm saying to you is, if you look at the growth items, go through them in detail, section by section, look at those different offices. That's all come about through discussion with senior directors, with the chief exec, with managers. what resources required to deliver plans. And that's what's set out in this budget very, very clearly. Now, you may agree with that or disagree with it, perfectly you're right, but that's the direction of travel that we will be going in on the financial side. So we'll make that very, very clear. I think, Mr Dickinson, I don't know if you have any other comments you wanted to make to Councillor Hurst's comments.
The one thing to also note is LGR, and so LGR is going to take a lot of it's going to take a lot of bandwidth, or whatever you want to call it, within the council, and so the growth items in here, though some of them are short term, are looking to allow officers to concentrate on getting things done, while LGR sort of happens and other people support them in that. But we haven't quite felt LGR yet. We've had a little bit when we're doing the business cases, but I think as we go into next year and it's decided, there will be a lot of pressure. And so the idea with this budget is to try and get on the front foot with that, because we need to get people in quite quickly to support that, to allow the other priorities to be focused on.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say, just backing up what Dixon says, there are a lot of things in this budget to deliver. Someone's got to deliver them. Obviously, we need the officer capacity, and that is what the plan is, to get the officer capacity on board to deliver these plans in this budget. Yeah, Councillor, you want to come back?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I absolutely agree with that point. The evidence we have from elsewhere in the country where they've already done LGR is there has been substantial slippage in service over the period of transition. It's really, really hard. And given that we have the one-off capacity in the budget, my question, perhaps even challenge, is how do we bring in some one-off external capacity to backfill the officers who are going to be busy dealing with LGR?
Well, we'll have to meet that challenge. I think our approach is as and when the decision's made on LGR in terms of who we're going to be with. The general view is obviously we're asking officers to embrace the change as best they can, as best we all can, because it's going to be a very changing and challenging environment. And I was talking to colleagues, I was on an LGA course at the weekend up in Coventry on LGR, and talking to colleagues in Surrey who are going through this whole situation with joint committees. They've got shadow elections coming up. Also, colleagues have actually been through this whole process, and it's a testing journey, and particularly for the leadership of this council, it's going to be a tough one, but also for leadership of the opposition as well. You know, you're going to be drawn into the process. And I think it's going to be tricky for people, because you either embrace the process and accept it's happening, or you don't. There were some people I spoke to, different political parties over the weekend, who didn't want to embrace the process. But that makes it obviously then very difficult for their residents. So each individual, each party, each group has got to make their own decisions as to how they play this going forward, from a financial perspective, but also what's best for our residents. But it's going to be a tough journey. There's no doubts on that, and there's no sugarcoating. Financially, we've got to manage our way through the process as best we can. We're totally aware of I think it's the Section 24 scenario in October. We're fully aware of that. We're fully aware of the need to get contracts in place, etc., etc. And we'll go into it as best prepared as we can. But we're doing it with our eyes wide open, but also what's happened in other areas, learning from them as well. Yeah, so it's a tough one. Councillor Wakeland.
Let's just put that on. I'd really like to hear from the officers at this point, if I might, and I'd like them to talk us through how the council is thinking about this issue around surplus generation and reserves together, and what level of surplus is being generated deliberately. We've heard from the chair a number of jumping around type points, perfectly fair. What risk is it intended to cover, and how members, the ordinary folk in this council, are going to apply some methodology to assessing whether that balance remains appropriate as we carry on, not only through the budget process, but also through the future of how that budget develops in practice. And I really would like to hear from the officers, if I might, thank you, because I'm interested in the perspective of the people who are actually going to have to do the frontline working and bear all the points we were just discussing. So thank you.
I've got no problem with that, Councillor Wackland, but what I would say is with all committees, the buck tends to stop with the chair. So as and
Oh,
when...
I think that sounds like you're the backstop, Chair, so can we do the front
So,
stop first?
as and when it goes well, I'm sure you're going to give me lots of praise. When it doesn't, I'm sure you're going to criticise. But we take our responsibilities seriously.
I don't think I made a political point, Chair. I'm just asking a
I
question.
didn't. I'm making a political point, not you, Councillor Wackland. Right, Mr Dickinson, would you give some comment, please?
So, if I've got the question correct, so we've got effectively an exceptional income from the sale of Childerditch. So all the stars aligned. We sold at a high price to get a good where if interest rates go up, sometimes that affects the valuation, but it all worked well. We've got a lot of cash, but there's also risk. So a few years ago, the interest rates were zero effectively. Now they're about 4.5, and we've tried to lock that in. So we're trying to secure the income for the next 2 or 3 years. After that, probably most of the money is going to be invested. So that's what we're managing. So we're trying to make that one-off income last as long as it can. But there is quite a big risk of going into investing in leisure, and then investing in things that the council needs to invest in, but doesn't necessarily get a return, such as the depot. So we're sort of managing that, and that's why we do mention a few times that this is exceptional income, and that going forward, this isn't probably going to be the perfect position. But good option would be just put it all in the bank for 5 years and get the interest, but that's not what the council's there for. It's to try and improve the borough. So that's where that expenditure is going, and the risk is around the interest. For now, it's the interest rate risk, and then it's the capital program. And so the interest rate, we've mapped effectively what we're looking to invest, so how we run down the cash. We've tried to replicate the various investments we've got to try and lock in the rates we've currently got. So if interest rates go up, we won't necessarily participate in that upside, but we drawn a line and said, well, if they go down, we've sort of locked in for when the cash will be invested. So we've tried to de-risk that, and we've got some, even though the reserves have gone up to around about 20 million, they will, after the capital programme, drop back to where they've been for quite a few years, around about the 10 million. But we're constantly reviewing all the capital programme. That's probably one of the big risks. And then around the government funding, that will be, which is an unknown. We've got some certainty and over the next 3 years, but that certainty is that we are going to lose money effectively by having a flat settlement. So that's why the budget looks quite good in the first year, and it deteriorates a bit. But that's also because we've been quite prudent with the assumptions on the income. So there's potential for there to be quite a bit of upside, but the leisure industry and retail is not. It can vary quite a bit. So the budget's been set based on that. I don't know if there's.
That's really helpful, I think, because it explains how you see this in terms of, I think I can work out from that which bits you would regard as deliberate if a resident were asking the question, and which bits you would regard as consequential or inadvertent even. But what I'm really keen on is that because that profile, I think, is very complex, and I think the way I like your route map for it, can we produce that as a route map which enables us to give, or you to give advice to us as members as to how we assess how that is progressing, because it's not the customary position of generating a deficit and then working out what the risks are and so on and so forth with this. This one has the potential to be a roller coaster, and it seems to me that we're going to have to be quite fleet of foot as members, particularly in this committee, to work out how we're going to address that. So I don't know whether you're beginning the process of thinking about that, and it then will need, it seems to me, to move down the chain, down's the wrong word, but along the chain to the sound bites that will explain this to our residents, because my next question was going to be how do we explain what you and the chair have gone through in quite a few minutes in a way that is going to make sense and will tell them what it is that we are doing as members to protect their interests.
Could Can I just say, I mean, what will happen is with F&R committee, we will have regular updates, obviously, on the financial situation, including reserves, okay, at our meetings. If yourself, Councillor Wagland, or any other member, I'm sure Ms Dixon would be available, if you want to have a conversation in between meetings about specific points in terms of what's happening with reserves, whatever, I've certainly got no problem with that. You're perfectly entitled to do that. Because obviously things can change. There is a gap, obviously, between when meetings are held. We know that. But there's no problem on that at all. I mean, there's openness, transparency on it. You've got the figures there. You'll get an update at committee. If you want an update in between, you can have that. If you've got questions you wish to ask on the finances, please ask. There's no problem.
May I come back, Chair? That isn't the question I was asking. So if I can be quite clear, I'm looking at how we formulate a route map and guidance for members, not just the ones in this committee, but generally, as to how they approach this rather remarkable situation, which we would say was generated by the previous administration, I'm sure, but this remarkable situation, which carries with it all sorts of different considerations. So I've had to deal with a budget like this in my past lives, and I know how you go about doing those sorts of route maps. But it seems to me to be really important where we have, rather than I was dealing with shareholders, where we actually have members who are, to all intents and purposes, a sort of shareholder in the surplus. Are we going to produce that sort of guidance and methodology? I'm not asking you to do it now. I'm just asking for the beginnings of the process.
We can look at it, Councillor Egland. We'll look at it and we'll see in terms of what the council is doing, what we've got proposed going forward, how that relates to a potential, you're calling it a route map. Ms Stevenson, I don't know if you had any comments, but we're going to look at that issue. Ms Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Wagner. I think, picking up your point, it might be good to try and see if we can visualise this for members as well, perhaps a simple one-pager of the journey the council's taken over a number of years, unanimous decisions in most of them, around our commercial journey from acquiring Childerditch, investing in the Baytree Centre, now investing in the Brentwood Centre, building our first houses in, 7 houses in 30 years, and now we've got 154 being built over the next 4 or 5 years. So perhaps we can show the journey on our revenue budget and our capital budget as well. Reduction in debt. We can try and visualise that if that's what I think you might be picking up. So less of perhaps the numbers, but perhaps more of a visual that explains the numbers to people and see that journey, and also backs up the contingency and prudence around that. We've got over £100 million of capital projects coming forward, 64 million in the HRA, 23 million in Brentwood Centre, and over possibly 20 million in the Baytree Centre or more. So we could visualise that. The bit we just need to manage is we've got a 10 million revenue budget, so some people will see that as, wow, the council spent an awful lot of money. So we just need to probably put that into context around how that looks, because we are. But that's one of the reasons that the 151 director, David Dixon, has been quite prudent around that reserve, because we've never done some of these things before, and the market is quite volatile. So what we don't want to be sitting in front of you and saying, sorry, we took a 20 million hit, rather than have 20 million in reserves. But I think that's the more prudent way.
If I may, that's exactly what I was looking for, that sort of approach. I'm really interested in the way in which we can deal with that. And I think the next bit of that would be how do you assess the risk and other things? How do you as members look at what happens next? So some sort of methodology that says, look, if interest rates go up X, we're going to have to revisit this. It doesn't have to be that specific. So thank you for your time, and I really appreciate that answer. That's helpful.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barrett, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to refer back to some of the comments mentioned, and just to give an early version of my perspective in this. I think it's quite clear that this budget is prudent and sustainable, and quite deliberately cautious in a time of local, national and global uncertainty, which I think is an appropriate place to be. I think in turn there's also an element in here of generosity ahead of elections, potential change of authority in terms of, I know from experience when this administration first came in, the budget, while put together appropriately by the Conservatives, was relatively restrictive. You know, elements such as, you know, lighting up Brentwood being downgraded, etc., being built into the budget. This is, and that's not to say right or wrong thing, it's to say recognising that there will be a very short period where decisions can be made, post-May, given the Section 24 coming. So actually it's appropriate that there's more flexibility in this circumstance, A, for any new administration can impact, and B, to the factors actually Councillor Hurst and Raglan have quite covered, that we're in a great risk environment with LGR, knowing exactly what that is, how that will work. And I'm happier to have a more headline fund available for that than even just putting an LGR reserve. Because the habit, if you put an LGR reserve, is that can only be used by LGR. I actually want there to be flexibility, so we use it if we're needed, but we're not tempted to throw money at something that doesn't actually deliver anything long-term for Brentwood that another authority or the government should fund. In turn, the other element to it, the capital programme, Councillor Kendall mentioned it, but actually the investment in the asset and project team to actually deliver these programmes, I think is the key shift in how we're doing things and what we're looking to achieve. Partially, Brentwood has a long history of plans and ambitions. Some of them have been delivered and some of them have just not. Whatever party's been in charge since my childhood here, like when I first appeared here in about 1986, some plans never actually happened. And others happen in a different scale to what we anticipated or promised. So actually in this circumstance, they are carefully budgeted for, they are carefully planned, and they are deliberately led. And I think I'm quite pleased that there are only 3 significant projects. When with the money we've got, we could plan more, but I'd much rather have 3 we actually do than 5 or 6 theoreticals we never actually get round to. Because the one thing I can be pretty sure of in a new unitary authority, its priority will not be a niche project in one of the old districts. It will be something headline that wins them votes, support, lanyard, whatever it may be. So for me, that budget delivers on that. It's a combination of prudent planning on our capital programme, can actually be delivered on a practical timetable within a financeable window, and in turn it's a budget designed that with the corporate priority fund and with the wider flexibility that it offers, that actually it gives a future administration the ability to act on what it commits to and in turn have the flexibility to deal whatever it may face. And I think in this environment, that is the only course of action we could follow, because anything else is either too deeply political or too high risk to be acceptable, certainly for myself and I believe my colleagues in the joint administration, and in turn giving the electorate an actual ability to affect what happens in that last few years of Brentwood Borough Council as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. Thank you for letting me speak. One question, if I may. I see on the report that one of the areas where residents said they would like us to focus our resources on was community safety and enforcement. And perhaps I have missed it, and perhaps it is in there. I'm more than happy to be corrected. In fact, I'd be delighted to be corrected. But can I just ask, were there any growth bids for additional street inspectors that came forward as part of the budget, the compilation of this budget? And are they in there and have they been met? Because it's not jumping off the page to me from the report that we're actually providing additional bandwidth outside of the high street areas for street inspector services and enforcement, which I know from personal experience in my ward is extremely stretched, and trying to get the resources into that ward to actually address quite serious problems is always met with conflicting demands around the borough. So can I ask, was there a growth bid submitted, and is it included in the budget for the coming year, please? Thank you.
Can you just clarify, thanks for that, Councillor Barber, can you just clarify when you say street inspectors, do you mean the enforcement team?
I mean, not the street wardens, the town rangers. I'm talking about normal people who will go out and actually inspect things like cars parked on community greens, fly tipping in rural lanes. My understanding is that service at the moment is working at maximum capacity, and there was, I understood, going to be a growth bid to increase the capability of that service to the borough residents. So my question is, will we see additional resource coming in for enforcement and street inspectors for the coming year? Or yes or no, please?
Okay, I don't know if any of the members, Councillor Whiteside, if you're aware of anything on your side, or
But there
Councillor Barrett?
there is money committed in the budget for expanding the waste services and the team around that. I think you've slightly conflated two things. There's enforcement, which is one department, and then there's doing the job of identifying what needs cleaning up and moving quickly to clean it up. And on the latter, that there is provision for 2 additional staff in the depot team that can be deployed in flexibly. So they can be put onto fly tipping if we have a fly tipping problem. They can be put onto emptying bins if there's if we have a problem with overflowing bins, etc. So we've increased the team, but that doesn't, as far as I'm aware, be honest, doesn't cover enforcement, because that's not a depot responsibility.
I'm going to come back to you in a moment, Councillor Barrett. I've just got a couple of comments. I've got first Councillor Barrett, and I'll come to Councillor Aspinall. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you. I know, Councillor Barber, you're reflecting on it being outside the High Street. Obviously, you've seen the High Street enforcement bid within there, and in turn, that will inevitably provide wider capacity for the rest of the team, who currently are overstretched on the High Street and beyond that. In turn, as mentioned, the corporate priorities reserves, as we go to refresh and reflect the corporate priorities, that £1 million is usable for schemes that work and are effective. And this is part of us doing this kind of combination of considering things in the round and holistically and within a strategic approach. I don't think officers or members will be necessarily that willing to tell you what we talked about in the back room that we might like to have put in there, because we don't really want to write our leaflets, your leaflets for you. But nevertheless, lots of things to be considered, and they certainly, I imagine, will be clean under the cleaner, greener, safer strand within the corporate priorities. In turn, I would also, it's my personal belief that when that March meeting comes, that as much as possible, as we come to the end of the council, taking suggestions from all sides is a sensible thing to do. We don't have a monopoly on good ideas. Often we don't have, that many good ideas. So on a practical level, anything you have that's a suggestion for that priorities, I think should be considered, and in turn as part of that strategic approach can be brought forward. So whilst this budget is reflective of growth items we self-funded within the priorities, we'll be considering that, and in turn a future administration could change said priorities to fund things as appropriate. So there is efforts to focus initial self-funding support, which will build wider capacity in the enforcement team, and in general in the corporate priorities, the cleaner, greener, I can't say that, it's 3 simple words. Why can I not say it? I don't know. But there will be consideration of community safety, and in turn, actually, I like hearing what Councillor Hurst said earlier, I think in general, combinations and opportunities to work with the police will be something to consider within this kind of broader consideration, future-looking approach that hopefully will be less. And in turn for that, we can consider where joint funding opportunities and other things could appear as well within the wider strategic approach. So I hope that answers most of your points, but you may come back at me and say you'd like detail of what we talked about in the back room, but I'm unlikely to be able to share that with you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Barber. I think that helps. I take on board your point, Councillor Barber, and it is something certainly that can be considered. I think with all these things, it's striking a balance between doing new things, taking on more resource to carry out different functions. It's also the issue of continuing that resource, continuing that function, because as soon as you stop something, it's a cut. And people are very quick to remind you, you started this service, now it no longer exists. So we need to look at things very much in the round, look at things going forward, what is feasible, what's viable, and what can we, deliver over a period of time. Councillor Aspinall.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have to remind members that it was the County Council who have they slashed and got rid of completely the service, which was Highway Rangers. And members of Bruntwood staff have been picking up that slack in some of those areas that we can. We have, and I have to say that I thought most members knew, we had employed an additional 2 Highway Rangers for enforcement purposes. And I met with them a couple of months ago. Now, the figures may well not have worked their way through to us yet, but there's an uplift in our car parking income and the level of fines that we're getting because of their efforts. So I know that they are working well and that they're a great asset to our team. Going forward, if we feel that there is still more need for additional enforcement, not just the high street, elsewhere, outside school gates and stations elsewhere, we'll look at that, and that will be part of our programme going forward. And lastly, Chairman, it's the last time I share my speech for full council with the Chief Executive. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Bobby, you wanted to come back on it.
Just to clarify my comments were not aimed at depot resources. They were aimed at the lack of enforcement services across this borough, and our own conclusion in our report 3.7.6 says that 344 people, the most of any response, wanted to spend more on community safety and enforcement. And I've simply asked the question, where are we spending more? Because in the report it's not evident to me that we are focusing on that service which is understrained. That's my experience and our experience in our ward. And I'm simply asking why we're not doing what our residents are telling us in this report is their top priority. And you know, fair enough, I'm always open to, and actually it's not about writing leaflets, frankly, it's actually about addressing concerns of the people that phone us up and don't get the response they're expecting from us as a council, because frankly I would prefer it was actually, because no one's watching this on the screen, it's not going to appear in the Gazette, let's be honest, I know that. But I'm just saying it because my residents are telling me they're trying to get things resolved and they can't at the moment because there's a lack of resource in our council. And I'm just telling you, you know, away from the ordinary council meeting, that should be a priority to this administration. Forget Tory and Labour and Liberal. That's what we should be focused on, and I can't see anywhere in the report that's in there.
Okay, Councillor Bob. Thank you. Thanks for your comments. I think they're taken on board. We have already said of community safety, the main push has obviously been on CCTV, which I've outlined already, okay? But we will take on board those points. We do listen, believe it or not, to what you and your colleagues say. If you look in the growth proposals, you'll notice that one of your amendments that you put forward last year on Brevin Community Transport appears in the proposals. So we did listen, okay? So that's, you know, something that should be pleased about and shows that we do take on board if you've got a sensible suggestion. And the points you raise, I can understand what you're saying regarding Hutton. We will look at that issue, okay? Got Councillor Parker next, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In setting the council tax at the maximum, 2.99, not something I personally agree with, but that's neither here nor there. Did you take, the reason for doing it was, there seems to be a rumour, a reason that I've never heard of before, that if the council does not set it at the rate, the highest rate, then the grant from the government will decrease. Is that a rumour, fact, or have you got it in writing?
We are going to cover council tax on agenda Appendix H. So we're going to come to council tax if we may, okay? We will come to that. So please, yeah, we'll save it till then. We'll save it till then. I'm sure we can remember it. It's not a problem. Right. Anyone else on Appendix A? Councillor Wakelin.
Thank you very much indeed. Forgive me, I was just looking at my notes. In terms of looking specifically at Appendix A, we've debated at some length the enforcement point, but have officers got any particular areas where this particular budget looks to be balanced on paper, but where delivery is likely to be under pressure going forward? Probably LGR, and which, if you had two of these lines that you thought members should keep a really eagle eye on, what would they be?
Mr Dixon.
Right.
Apologies.
So you've answered the first one, which is LGR. I think that's a key, just because of the amount of meetings that we had in the middle of last year. They sort of creep up on you, and there can be some issues around that. And then since I've been here, planning and trying to get good people in planning seems to be quite difficult. And so we're putting more money into that. You actually have to get the good staff to do that. And then the third one, is assets. So there's already been a lot of money put into assets, but that's a key area that I'll monitor quite closely.
I think what's useful is we've got, I think Councillor Barrett, correct me if I'm wrong, we've got 2 more asset meetings before the close of the council before elections. So I know there's a lot of issues that are going to be covered there as well. So that's positive. Right, I'm going to move on. That was Appendix A. We're going to move now to Appendix B. Appendix B is the Housing Revenue Account Business Plan. I sit on Housing and Community Services. We've got the chair with us as well tonight. Thank you, Councillor Barrett, for being with us. The report highlights the fact that we had the net increase on the rents of 4.8%, which was agreed at the Housing Committee unanimously, cross-party, by members, and there's also obviously the general business plan. So I'll open it up to members on the Housing Revenue Account. Any questions, please? Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. Page 113, I think it's repeated further in. It's the second point down. It's talking about retaining Treasury advisors, and then it goes on to talk about loans, investments, and balanced maturity. 3 very quick questions is, who are the Treasury advisors, and are we paying them? On the investments, the loans, what is the duration? And also, can you define balanced profile? Thank you.
Get all those, Mr. Dickinson.
I think so. So the Treasury advisors, so this is HRA, but they're the same advisors for the council. So it's MUFG, so they used to be called Link and Capita before that. So they're pretty much 2 major Treasury advisors, and they're one of them. So they advise the council and therefore the HRA. The question on borrowing, I'd need to just firm that up. But I can
And also say the duration on the investments, please. That's quite a key factor in terms of interest rate moves and the impact on values.
Yeah, so it's generally quite long term, but I can get the specific sort of average years and
We'll come back to that. Okay, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Tim Barrett.
Thank you, Chair. Not a member of your committee. Thank you for letting me speak. I'll just say, I guess it's the 30-year plan. Obviously, you can see by when you get further in the report and you get to the 30-year chart, you can see that we've had to make a lot of financially prudent decisions as a housing committee over the last couple of years to make sure that we have a sustainable HRA. I mean, one thing that's for sure that after LGR, the housing revenue account remains. It actually takes the Secretary of State to change that. So the housing revenue account needs to be sustainable for the people of Brentwood for the future, and I think this does that, and we are both investing in our stock as well as building new housing, and doing those 2 things at the same time obviously puts pressure on the accounts. And I'm very glad that we can maintain a positive picture, hopefully for the next 30 years. Fingers crossed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Anyone else? Councillor Hurst.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I know this has been well debated elsewhere, and I think we're happy overall to support the... you're doing it en bloc, so we can't individually support it. We would be if we could. But what Councillor Barrett there just said intrigued me. So I had been expecting that whichever councils come together, the Secretary of State will decide to merge those HRAs. You're telling us that the HRAs will remain separate entities for the different geographies within the unitary. Is that correct? Have I understood you?
I've got Councillor Barrett or Mr. Stevenson, whoever. Councillor Barrett, did you want to go first?
I mean, I can go first, that they will not be combined in the first process. In the future, they can be combined, but it's not in the first process.
Okay, Mr Stevenson, did you wish to add to that at all? Or
Yeah,
is that
thank you,
your
Chair.
reading?
And just to confirm, in the initial tranche and statutory orders, that won't be part of the process. They don't have to be joined up. You have to actually consult with all our tenants. So there's a process, another part of legislation they have to do that. So to combine, like some councils that have given up their stock to a housing association, it's the same process they have to undertake. You can combine, and it's probably likely that those new councils will do that. But for example, if we were partnered with Malden, Chelmsford, there might not be any reason to do anything with the Brentwood HRA. It could stay as a Brentwood HRA unless they want to expand into Chelmsford and Malden, if that, just using that example as one.
Anyone else on housing? No? Okay. Oh, Councillor.
Sorry, one very quick question. I hope this is the right section to ask it. Is on the revenue on the car parks, is it actually with software to actually identify when it's being generated? It sort of loops back to my earlier question from the previous meeting about Friars and Hunter Avenue. You know, those car parks sit empty in the evening while all the local roads are clogged. If we're not generating any revenue from it, is it possible to actually identify, you know, effectively when the assets are being wasted, and is there a better way of doing things? So can we actually identify when the revenue is being generated?
That will come under the car park strategy, which we're going to cover on February 18th. Okay, so obviously make a note on that. If you want to send me an email on that as well, we'll make sure that's covered. Okay, it's an important point. Thank you. Right, I'm going to move on from housing. Next one is C, Capital Strategy 26, 27, 29, 30. Sets out the proposals for the council's capital requirements. The details of the programme are on pages 127 and 128. And the regeneration programme is on page 130 and the HRA programme on 131. So you can see it laid out there. As has been said, one of the reasons we're in the good position that we are is obviously because of the sale of Childerditch. When Childerditch was purchased under previous administration, it was a unanimous decision. When Childerditch was sold under this administration, unfortunately it wasn't a unanimous decision, but the majority of members supported it, and I'm very pleased they did, because that's the reason why we're in the position we're in now. But you can see obviously the capital programme there. You can see what happened regarding the Phoenix loan, interest, and what happened there as well. So it's open to questions from members. Any questions?
Thank you, Chair. It's a very trivial one in the global scheme of things, but it always perplexes me. Street plate, nameplates. Why do we replace a nameplate that we could simply, under the old scheme, come along, spray white, and then have a little black roller to put the paint over? It does seem to be not very green, and it also seems to be a very poor use of council assets to replace unnecessarily a street sign with a plastic new one.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Barber. I was expecting lots of questions, but not that particular one. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that observation. I don't personally know the answer to that question, Councillor Barber. I'm sure someone can find out for you, and we will take it offline and we will try and give you an answer. I'm sure you've got some other crackers lined up for the rest of the appendix we've got before us. Yep. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Barker. But we'll get some feedback on that. Yep. Okay. Thanks for that. Councillor Hurst.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I'm on. I'll get confused about the page numbers, but I'm on. I think page 12 of this appendix, which is the Brentwood Investment Programme. I don't think it's item 6 was street nameplates, but this doesn't appear to have its own number. Anyway, be that as it may, it's just, you look at this and the Brentwood Centre, 25 million this year, and then nothing in 27, 28 and nothing in 28, 29. I think it's fairly extraordinary that we would manage to spend £25 million in 1 year on the Brentwood Centre. I just wonder why the profiling is so front-loaded.
Okay, well, we can ask for a comment from the Chair of Assets, Councillor Barrett.
there will be further proposals coming to the Assets Committee. I think it's the February one for the Brentwood Centre, which will outline how the level of ambition for this. But I do grant you that there is a potential that it may slip into a second year, but the intended plan is that it is completed before the end of that financial year.
The end of this coming financial year?
So yes, the end of 26-27 it will be. That is the intent of the programme, so it will be quite rapid. And that said, is there a doubt in my mind that that may actually be achieved? There is a slight doubt. But nevertheless, I wanted the stage of being, especially with procurement process, in some elements you have to, with different funding and buying in advance and opportunity with contracts, etc. So the prudent approach in terms of making sure we didn't overspend was have the money in there. But you're granted a point. Our record may not be the best on this. So yes, there is a level of ambition, but you are right to question it. And in turn, that may be something that regrettably has to be reprofiled at a future budget meeting, but right now that is the intent of the programme.
Yeah, I think in fairness, it's the aim, the ambition, the intention is what we're after. But as you all know, Councillor Hurst, from previous administrations, people start off with capital programmes, there is slippage, yeah? The difference we've got in this situation is obviously we've got certain time frames and everything else, and Councillor Barrett will be giving an update at the next two assets meetings in terms of where we're at and the process that we're looking to use to try and drive the whole thing forward, because it will definitely need to be driven. Councillor Hurst.
Reality, never mind about previous administrations, just tells you that spending, an organisation of this size, spending £25 million in 1 year is a devil of a task, and I'll be full of admiration for anyone who achieves it. But what I'm going to take away from this is that you are allowing yourselves the flexibility to spend as much of the improvement in the Brentwood Centre in the first year as you possibly can.
I think that's the right interpretation, Councillor Hurst.
I think that's a fair assessment, Councillor Hurst. Thank you. Wish to speak on this point? No? Okay, thanks for that. We're going to go on next to Appendix D, which is the updated and reprofiled capital programme. If there's any comments on that, please let me know. Anything on there? No? Okay, fine. We then go on to Appendix E, which is the capital and investment strategy for 26-27. As the report says, this focuses on maintaining essential operational assets, delivering the HRA Decent Homes programme, investing in IT and digital infrastructure, supporting strategic regeneration projects and major capital investments in the Brentwood Centre, the Battery Centre and the Council Depot. Having been to that LGA course at the weekend on LGR and listened to colleagues from around the country, one of the areas where there has been issues is on IT. This is where councils have, merged with other councils and have been issues. I know Ms Stevenson's been heavily involved on this from an Essex perspective, but that's one of the reasons, the many reasons why we've got extra investment in IT in this budget, and also because of cyber security as well. So we're taking the issue very seriously and trying to ensure we're as geared up as we can be. Sorry? Which page am I on? I'm dancing around various pages. There was no specific... 137? Oh, I like to keep you challenged. So, Ms Stevenson, is there anything you wanted to comment on the IT side? Because I know you've been doing work on that, haven't you?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just really, there's a lot of work happening in the system. We're very fortunate in Essex. We've got something called the Essex Digital Partnership, which includes the police and fire, as well as the partnerships with the 17, potentially 18 partners with the combined authority as well. It is a bit of a web. There's 600 different platforms and systems amongst our 15 or 18 authorities. So it will be a challenge, those 600 systems coming together to create 3, 4 or 5 unitary councils. Not all of those will happen for day one. It'll be dangerous to actually try and merge all that as one, but there will be things like key lines of sight for finance and HR, which will be key for those authorities to have from day one, but it's unlikely that all the other systems will be merged. But to be safe and legal on day one, there's a lot of work being done. We're working in Essex, also leading nationally with MHCLG and the Department of Science, Information and Technology and GDS around some of this as well to make sure what we're doing aligns and probably leads the way nationally as well, because there has been, as others have said, some challenges come before us, so we're hopeful to learn from that and develop further. But there is some things we should be trying to look at, how we could work together as a system regardless of how many unitaries. Things, for example, like cybersecurity, you're only as weak, as strong as your weakest link. So we create 3, 4 or 5 authorities and one's not as strong as the others. So there is ideas of looking at how we could put a proposal forward that might be that look at all councils signing up for some cybersecurity policies, procedures and resource to make Greater Essex a stronger authority when it comes to cybersecurity. And moving forward, the transformation of any of these new services and the savings will all be linked to digital and what we do with our digital journey. So there's a lot of work happening. Just to assure you, the work started, but there's a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Ms Stevens. Councillor Wegland.
Thank you. Since we were dotting around, I feel slightly less temerity about just asking this particular point of clarification. But since we haven't had this sort of item for a long, the one I'm going to mention, I don't feel quite so guilty about not knowing where it is. But can you explain to me where SIL comes in these accounts and how do we estimate? I appreciate we're in capital at the moment and I've been waiting for an appropriate slot to ask the question. So, Chair, very happy to let it defer until wherever we're supposed to be asking it, but I didn't want to lose it, if you know what I mean. Thank you.
Can we try and cover that one, address that one now?
Yeah, so SIL's fairly new to the council, so we're just starting to forecast on it. Yeah, I'm not too sure it's in the capital programme to any great extent. I don't think it's been allocated as yet. So as we receive the money and allocate it, then it'll be included in the capital programme. It's currently not there as a funding source, as far as I'm aware.
What do other people do? Because there have been places where has been a lot of SIL. I just can't imagine that you wouldn't want to forecast for it. And I had wondered whether it would appear in relation to lending and funding, which sort of vaguely looked like the right sort of place for it. But it does seem to me to be curious. And it is probably the one question about our finances that I get asked pretty regularly, actually, which is what's happening about SIL. And I know the leader is very keen on our getting what we can get out of it. And I'm very keen on proving that it worked because it was part of my initiative to help councils bring it about when I'm wearing my county councillor hat. So it would be really useful to have a feel for what should happen with it and what we choose to do with it, which is probably going to be one and the same thing.
Ms Dixon.
Yes, that and Section 106 is definitely something we're trying to, we will be working on, but we haven't quite, I think, got there just yet.
Thank you. We have received some SIL income at present. That goes into an individual reserve and then can be drawn down in the capital programme appropriately to the requirements of the SIL levy.
There's nothing in there for it.
We don't forecast an income line on SIL because we always move it to reserves.
First.
Just actually going back to what we were talking about just before the SIL issue, you were talking about the investment in IT required and the massive number of different platforms, etc. Am I right in thinking that a chunk of that investment can actually be funded by the transition funding? I believe we're getting a chunk of 41 million over the couple of years that it's happening. Or have I got that wrong?
So, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. The only transition I'm aware of, obviously, is the funding that will go into the combined authority. I'm not aware of any transition funding being announced yet. I think there's a eager anticipation of some funding to come in, but I think the expectation, what I'm seeing in the business models, is they're self-funding within their own business models. I'm not aware of any additional funding to the money we had previously to help us with the business case, but I don't know if my colleague, David Dixon, can confirm. So, yeah, we're hoping for that windfall of some funding to help, because it would help. But no, but if there is 41 million coming this way, I'm sure it'll be easily spent in the work around LGR. But yeah, I'm not aware of that at this present time.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, right, we're going to move on next to fees and charges. Most of the fees and charges have gone up on average by 3.8%, as you'll see when you go through. However, we are freezing the car parking charges in all our car parks for the second year running, and there will also be the differential between the multi-storey car park and the other car parks in the town centre. So if our residents wish to park for an hour in the town centre, they can do so for £1 at the multi-storey. There is one slight amendment to the fees that we have in front of us on the car parking side. Is to do with the residence card. Any reference to that will need to be removed from the fees and charges. What's been happening is officers have been looking obviously at the new system that we have in place, ANPR, and how could it work with the residence card. And unfortunately, the two are not compatible. Just a bit of an update on the residence card. Those of you who've been on the council for a while will remember it was introduced back in 2017. It was sent out with council tax demands. It was a small little yellow card. And as we understand it, to start with, there was some usage of it. In recent times, it's been very difficult to gauge how many people are using the residence card. Because there was no renewal system put in place for the card. It was just put out there back in 2017. So the fact that some people have still got them all these 9 years later, you know, that's for them. But what happened is when we introduced ANPR, the few people, I think we had about 15 inquiries on the residence card from residents, you know, either emailed or phoned in. They couldn't use their residence card with ANPR. We've gone back to those people that have contacted us and said, as it stands at the moment, you cannot use your residence card. We will look going forward as part of the car parking strategy. We'll look at the whole issue going forward in future. But at this moment in time, it cannot be used. So where there is a reference in the fees and charges, that will be removed. As I said before, if you wish to park for 2 hours in our car parks, you can do in the multi-storey car park, and it is cheaper than obviously the William Hunter Way and the Chatham Way car park. So if you can make sure we've got a note of that, please, Amy, that'd be appreciated. Does anyone wish to speak on fees and charges?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As you've taken the opportunity to give a plug for your freezing of car park charges, can I point out that we've frozen the collection of garden waste for another year, and also we've responded to something that has come up quite a few times, which is introducing a fee for collection of a single bulky item, and then an additional fee for collecting multiple items after that. Something that's come up sometimes. Members will know that the system we have up to now has been assuming that people have at least 2 items to collect, and I think that's been a disincentive for some people to use the service. So we have introduced a single item collection fee for next year.
In that, Councillor Worsfold. Councillor Tim Barron.
Thank you, Chair. While we're going, the Family Fun Days fees are also frozen for another year. Thank you.
Great. Sir Barber.
Chair, I was just going to thank you for adopting 2 policies from the Conservative side in this year's budget on your side. So yes, you have been listening, and that's good that the single item is going to be available, because a lot of people are extremely upset about that, and it's a good call to include it in your budget. Well done.
Looking forward to your vote for this, Councillor Barber. This is looking good. Unfortunately, you can't, Councillor Barber, because you're not in the committee. You left it to Councillor Hurst. So. Of course you can, Councillor Hurst. You can. You've done it on loads of things, yeah? Hold your nose and vote for it. Right, moving on. Appendix G is the pay policy statement. Mr Dixon, do you have anything you wish to add?
No.
From members through on the pay policy statement. No? Okay, I'm going to move on. Appendix H is the council tax resolution. I told you it would come. Councillor Hurst, it was going to come on its way. We have taken the view with the council tax. Well, let me start by saying, I'm sure most of you remember this because I said it last year. When you get your council tax bills and you see all the breakdown, the county council tax, the borough, the police and fire and everything else, yeah, 9%, okay, I'll repeat, 9% of that money, yeah, comes to Brentwood, yeah, Brentwood Borough Council, 9%, so it's a small amount. So when we have a 2.99% increase, okay, it's slightly different from, obviously, well, not slightly, it's very, very different from the county council. You know, 2.99% of county is a lot of money. 2.99% for us is 6.69 pence per year, is 53 pence a month, or it's 13p a week. That's the increase, okay? Now, we've taken the view, we've looked back, and there have been times when the council tax has been frozen, a percentage point's been taken off it, or 2 percentage points been taken off it. All it's done is affect our cumulative income that we've had. That's the reality, Councillor Parker. It's affected that cumulative income. And our view is going into, particularly going forward with LGR, there's going to be a whole host of issues to look at in terms of equalisation on a whole range of things, because different councils operate at different rates. In terms of council tax, fees and charges, etc., etc. But we've taken the view that it's responsible to go at 2.99%. Others may have a different view, and I fully respect that, but that's what we're doing as administration. Okay, so I don't know if that answered any of your question, Councillor Parker, or if you want Mr. Dixon to give you any clarification, we can do, but if you want to raise it again, that's fine.
My question was that if the council tax was different, zero if we like, I've heard, and it seems to be a rumour at the moment, or is it fact, that if councils in general do not ask for the maximum amount, then the grant from government is going to decrease. Is this a rumour? Is it fact? Or if it is fact, have we got it in writing?
Mr. Dixon.
Thank you, Chair. The answer is probably sort of. So the grant doesn't. The grant.
We can't have sort of. We've got sort of 2.99%. It could be sort of 1.99%.
So the grant won't change. The grant that they give us, the various bits of funding won't change. But what they've done is they've included an assumption that it will go up by 3%. So when we see it as flat, we don't normally, we look at funding, we look at business rates, and we look at council tax, and then the funding from the government. The government normally doesn't look at the council tax; they give the funding separate from that. But now they do, and they assume that it's two sides as well. That the number of homes will increase as well, so there'll be growth within the council tax base, and then there'll also be the 3%. And so if you fall behind on any of those two, then you've fallen behind sort of for a while. Now you can increase the properties, but the council tax you'll be behind on. So that's what I'm saying. So in our 3-year settlement, if we don't increase it by 3% and it's lower, there will be a bigger drop in the income than you would normally expect from a settlement each year.
A drop in income from the government, or are you saying a drop in we would have a drop in income? Because I mean, it's a straightforward question. If we don't put the council tax to the full rate, is the grant going down because we haven't fulfilled that purpose?
No, it's not going to go down. It'll be the same amount.
Okay, thank you. It's a rumour. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to say, obviously it's a rumour. There's a neighbouring authority run by Labour Party that aren't putting council tax up, and their revenue from the government isn't changing as a result. I was interested reading this and understanding that we're doing a community governance review at the moment, and looking at the appendix of the council tax precepts. And we mentioned how much 9% of council tax obviously goes to us. But in the case of one of these parish councils, I'm not going to name them, 7% goes to them. It's actually I'm pro parish councils. I'll say that. But I think when we do community governance reviews, we do have to look at, have to be honest with people and share these figures. I think we do a lot with our share of council tax. And I'm sure parish councils do. But I think there's quantities of scale that we can achieve more than some of the parish councils, which are now similar figures in terms of precepts to how much that we get. It's just to point out.
Yeah. Just an observation, Councillor Barrett. Thanks for that. It's yeah, worth pointing that out. Anyone else on the council tax? Councillor Hurst.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the thing that we discussed, that Councillor Parker and Mr Dickinson were discussing, the difference between grants and core spending power. Sadly, the government's adopted the approach that it's long had with both the Fire and Rescue Service and the Police Service, where they tell you that you're increasing your core spending power, but you've got to raise the money yourself from your own residents. It's a real pain, and the reality is, for instance, for the Fire and Rescue Service in this year's 3-year SR, the government is reducing grant for Essex County Fire and Rescue Service in cash terms, not in real terms, in cash terms, and telling us that we've got a 3.6% increase in core spending power because they've given us the ability to raise the council tax by 6%.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, I'm going to move on to Appendix I, which is our plan, our future, which is our corporate priorities. That's 24 up to 28. As said before, we're going to be discussing additional priorities at the March meeting, but if anyone has any comments about Appendix I, anything you wish to say? No? Okay, great. I'm going to move on then to Appendix J, which is the Engage With Us Council Priorities Residents Engagement Survey. I think what was pleasing from my perspective was the fact we had 573 responses, which is good, which is more than we've had in previous times. I think, as has been mentioned already, cleaner and greener and safer was ranked having the highest importance, which I'm pleased that you know, those are two obviously priority areas for the council, and a place to call home was the second. More specifically, residents wanted more investment in street services, bin collection, more investment in community safety, economic development, attracting inward investment. We've got that built into the budget. So I think that's important. We have listened, and as I say, we've got investment in all those areas. There's always other opportunities. So as we've said before, if there are ideas, suggestions, we've had one from Councillor Barber this evening. If there are others, you know, we're welcome to listen. Okay. But any comments from any members regarding Appendix J? Councillor Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. It may be that it's too late, because it may be that we don't have to do this again. However, looking through the results, I would have found it very useful, and that's why I want it on record, because if we do have this exercise again, I would like this to be considered, that we ask the respondents how old they are, what areas, what bracket they're in. Okay, that's fairly common now for most surveys, and we haven't done that. And I think it would be useful to know what the priorities are for those residents who hopefully will still be living here in 30 or 40 years time and have a stake in that. I was disappointed in the response in terms of housing, for example, and I would like to understand who it is who is responding to our surveys that is informing our policy. Okay, so if we can, and I'll bring it up when we design the next surveys, I would like a breakdown in terms of the age groups responding to our survey. Good. Thank you.
Councillors, did you wish to speak, or were you just talking about whether you're going to be here in 40 years' time? Yeah.
Well, I probably won't.
Right. Wish to speak on this particular item? No? Okay. Okay, right, we're going to move on. Thank you for that. Going to move on to Appendix K, which is the Section 151 Officers' Assurance Statement. This is one which puts Ms Dixon on the spot. I would just take one section that I read through, which gave me comfort as chair of the committee, which is overall the budget proposals are robust and sustainable, and the level of reserves is adequate to address the financial risk facing the council in the current year and years up to vesting date. I'm encouraged and obviously pleased to see that response. I've seen many Section 151 officers' assurance statements over the years, and some have not been as positive as that, believe me. There have been times, all members will remember, we've had some difficult financial times, and Section 151 has had to say various things. Any comments from members about Section 151 response? No? Okay. Right, I have, just confirmed, I've already moved the motion and, yep, thing. I would like to thank members for your questions and your points of clarification. I think it has been a useful meeting. Hopefully we've covered all the things you wish to discuss. As chair of this committee, I am proud of the budget that's been put forward this evening. I think it does offer, it delivers concrete improvements for our borough and for our residents. I think we are listening to residents. I think we are investing in the areas where they want to see more investment, particularly street cleansing, CCTV, community safety. And I think the fact that we're freezing the car parking charges. I was at a meeting last night with Councillor Barrett and Councillor Poppy, where we were at the BBP meeting, and we had various shopkeepers. We actually had management there from Boots at the meeting, and we mentioned about the car parking situation, and they all welcomed that news on the car park side and the fact that we had the free Sunday car parking. So it's certainly been supported there. I think also looking through the report, the fact that this council has reduced debt by £45 million in 1 year is a first, never been done in the council's history. So that is a major achievement, and we've got the debt down. We know the reasons why we've managed to do that, but I think, again, thanks to Mr Dickinson and the team for the work they did following the sale of that large asset, because I think our investment strategy from the officers was very, very sound, and it put us in a strong position. So I'm going to close on this item now by moving to the vote. Councillor Hurst.
Only because it's such a significant issue, it is the annual budget, could I please ask for a recorded vote?
No problem. Yep. So, if you can do a recorded vote, please.
Please can members indicate for or against or abstain when their name is called. Councillor Kendall.
For.
Councillor Mayo.
For.
Councillor Barrett.
For.
Councillor Hurst. Councillor Gordon. Councillor Lewis. Councillor Parker. Councillor Wagland. And Councillor Worsfold. Thank you, members. That's carried, Chair.